We want to exclude Friday.
Yeah, I hope we can knock that off.
Yep.
Personally, yeah, I'm probably a little, want to have a little bit more freedom on that. Josh, you're not being told you can't. You just have to do it within. No, I understand that. Within the speed limit. Yeah, I understand that.
Nick, there. All right, we'll open the meeting. Start with the invocation by Diane.
As we come to the close of the days celebrating the birth of our nation, we are thankful for the gatherings we were able to join, the family we were able to see, and the return of many customs and festivities that we missed last year. Sometimes it takes loss to help us appreciate what we have. Help us to never take our system of governance for granted and to take our rights and responsibilities as those elected to serve our citizens seriously. As we deliberate, listen, and make decisions tonight, may we each be aware of our many blessings as citizens of a free nation. In your name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Diane. Let's let the minutes reflect all counselors are present in person.
And all press is present in person.
It's a double whammy.
So with that, let's, first item of business would be the approval of the minutes from the June 7th session. Those have been presented. Are there any corrections, additions, or is there a motion to present them, or to approve them as presented?
I would move to approve them as presented.
All right. Motion by Cindy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Josh. Any further discussion? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Looks like we have a visitor. Chris, welcome. Good to see you. Lynn, you've got some budget dates you want to review here just to make sure everybody's on board.
Yeah, it's more like save the dates for the council, especially on the October 18th meeting when we'll be having the adoption and the hearing and the rules you passed earlier this year about electronically joining in on the meetings. So do you have any questions?
So the public hearing and the first reading is September 20th. And then we will actually have a meeting in between the final reading, which should be October 18th. And Lynn's got the advertisement dates. There's also dates here regarding salary ordinances need to be adopted by November 1st, and the elected official salary ordinance by December 31st. No change on those. So looks like August 2nd, we'll start, August 2nd and the 16th, we'll start both meetings at 6 p.m. for presentation of department budgets, as well as other council business. And then again on the 16th, same thing. So mark your calendars now for 6 p.m. starts on the 2nd and the 16th of August. And then we'll be back to regular time.
In the first meeting, on the first meeting in September.
And then the October meeting, as Lynn mentioned, none of you can participate by means of electronic communication and take any final action on that budget, and that would be for that October 18th meeting. All right, any questions? Okay, thank you. Lynn, thanks for putting that together. I know that's always hectic to try and find those dates. So, all right. Well, with no unfinished business, let's move into new business. And again, Lynn, I'll call on you regarding Resolution 2021-0701. Basically is a resolution to encumber the listed amounts in the listed budgets. So looks like there's been some adjustments there. So this is a revision.
Yeah, so this is what we have to do to move the budget forward. And every year I come with the encumbrance resolution, so you can see what has been liquidated out of purchase orders from last year that were held over until this year, but not forwarded to the whole purchase order. Say a purchase order was originally for $50,000 and someone only needed $45,000. So this is the amount that wasn't used off those purchase orders.
Questions?
And then are these amounts just placed back into the named funds?
Into whatever fund, yeah. It's really not quite bad this time. I mean, there's not large amounts on any of the POs that have been liquidated for that reason.
I move to approve Resolution 210701.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Something else you'll note on your appropriations reports that you get, and does it show on the statements that you typically publish for the council where it'll show the additions for the year? The fund balances, does it show on there, the encumbrances? Because that'll always show the amount you appropriated for the year. I know it's on the appropriation
No, it just
report.
has the beginning balance and the year-to-date revenue and what's dispersed, and the beginning of the month balance, revenue, what's dispersed, and then what the current.
So
balance
it
is.
doesn't have it on the fund balances, but if you happen to see or request an appropriation report, it will show what was appropriated for that current year, and it'll also show if there is an amount PO'd over, and it will also show line one cuts as well. So it can be a plus or a minus amount on there. So thank you for that. Lynn, you're still on board here with the authorization to invest public funds. I assume this is something that needs to be done annually?
Yes, this is another thing that we do every year around this time, so it gives me and Baker Tilly the chance to search around statewide for the best rates that we might get on investments when they come mature, which right now is probably a great rate anywhere, but
So again, if you read this, it basically allows banks outside the political subdivision to submit quotes on public funds, certificate of deposits. So you're just allowing that to happen. And Baker Tilly, as you've heard for many years, has been our investment advisors and has done a really good job laddering these investments, but they need that flexibility. So Lynn, anything else on that one?
no, you got it, what I left off.
Okay. All right, questions?
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2021-0702.
Motion made by Diane, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jack. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. All right, item number 3, ordinance 2021-0702 it's an amendment to the skateboards in the downtown business district. We've had complaints, concerns that have gone on for some time, and in discussion with our city attorney, we felt this amendment would give us a little bit more specific expectations and also enforcement capabilities and as well as penalties. So I'd ask Scott Royst, our city attorney, to just give us a thumbnail of what we're accomplishing with this amendment to the ordinance, and then take your questions on that.
So the city's previously had the ordinance that prohibits skateboarding in the downtown business district in certain areas. What it specifically did not include in the previous ordinance was public parking areas, parking lots that are the public parking lots right outside City Hall here. I looked at, it, I didn't think public way used for vehicle traffic really covered the parking lot or the parking area and the sidewalk out here. And so we're asking that you amend the previous ordinance to include the public parking areas that are located in the downtown business district. There's private parking areas that's up to the individual parking lot owner to police how they see fit, who can use their parking areas. But for the public parking areas, this ordinance would prevent skateboarding in the public parking areas. And then additionally, there didn't seem to be a penalty provision for violating the skateboard ordinance in the downtown business district. So we included penalty provisions for violating this ordinance, and that's under paragraph C.
All right, so you'll notice that under the definition, street means any highway, street, roadway, lane, public parking area. So by definition, our public parking area is, for this ordinance, defined as a street and prohibited operation or use of skateboarding on any street. So there's where that covers that up. And then the penalties, enforcement penalties are listed there. So I know some of you had concerns, and I know would like to weigh in on this, so I'd open it up to the council to make comments or ask questions of city attorney.
One question I would have then on the parking area, so it wouldn't cover a private area like Lake City Bank or Alderfer Bergen or something like that, right?
Correct. This is public area. If any person located in the downtown district owns the property, they get to choose the rules of what happens on their property. I don't think we're
Sure.
wanting to delve into that, but the public areas, I think we need an ordinance to cover that, to prevent the skateboarding for all the reasons, you know.
Mhm.
Parking lots are dangerous. I think
Oh,
they're
yes.
really dangerous places. People are pulling in, pulling out. I think it's for a really good common good to prevent skateboarding in public parking areas.
Theoretically then, a private business owner could actually put a sign up within their parking lot.
Yeah,
So
you know, public parking, private owners can have whatever rules they want for their property. You know, they can have people arrested for trespass if they wanted. They could have whatever they choose to do. They may allow skateboarding in their
Mhm.
private parking area. That's up to them, but this ordinance would prohibit it on highway, streets, roads, lanes, public parking areas, public ways, sidewalks, where other pedestrian and vehicle traffic are,
Including alleys as well,
and
correct?
including alleys.
Scott, I'm interested in that fine for a third or subsequent offense. There's a range in there, it appears to me anyhow, from 750 to not more than 2,500. How's that determined?
Well, so here's kind of how I looked at it. If you had a third offense, I think it'd be $750. If you had a fourth offense, I think it'd be $1,000. If you had a fifth offense, I think it'd be $1,250. But I would hope that it would stop by the third offense or the second offense, or hopefully nobody has to actually be ticketed at all. There's some discretion, but there's some teeth to having the statute that if somebody's warned or asked to stop that conduct, there's some enforcement mechanism if they choose to not. And I'm assuming that's probably how it would be handled, but the reason that the range is 750 to 2,500 is additional subsequent offenses, I think, would go up by $250 each time there was an additional offense. Up to, I guess, if they did it 10 times, there might be a $2,500 fine, but we'd cap at that.
Scott, I haven't talked to you prior to tonight about this, but I have a couple of questions. I assume other cities or towns are facing the same problem and having ordinances or litigating
to prohibit this?
Well, so just so you know, this council previously approved the skateboarding ordinance for the downtown business district. There was maybe just by oversight, or it just hadn't been considered,
Okay.
specifically this parking lot outside of City Hall, there has been some issues recently. And I was asked to look at the ordinance, and I didn't think our ordinance specifically covered public parking areas. And it maybe did, that public way used for vehicle traffic, possibly, but that's not exactly a public way. That is the parking areas for City Hall. So it's public parking area, but it's not exactly a public way. And I wanted to be more clear so everybody was on notice that a public parking lot, and there may be other examples in the downtown district, you know, the park down there in the parking lot of the public park, people shouldn't be skateboarding in that parking lot either. I think that was intended to be excluded, those different public areas. The library, some of those kind of things, I think the public parking areas would maybe be included.
Does this help us if somebody were to disregard and injure themselves? Would it protect the city from a lawsuit, or would it give us liability coverage, or do you know what I'm saying? Would protect us?
So here's what I know. If somebody gets hurt, everybody gets sued that you can possibly sue, right? That's just how it is. I think us telling people specifically that by ordinance, this council prohibits it from happening there just strengthens the idea that you are not invited to skateboard in our public parking areas, that is not a place. You know, this community's lucky. There are, they've made arrangements at some of the park. There's a skateboard park in this community. A lot of places don't actually have that. Over the weekend, I was in Cincinnati, and I was surprised how many places in the nice, newer waterfront park that they had like metal balls and metal slats on like a lot of the benches and a lot of the railings and a lot of whatever else. So they're now engineering specifically deterrents to keep people from roller skating or rollerblading or skateboarding and doing the tricks that people do off of the benches, the parkways, the walls. So it happens a lot of places, and this city recognized it a long time ago when it created the regular ordinance. We just beefed it up a little bit to include, being clearly including public parking areas.
So really, the catalyst for this was damage to public property?
When it was
Yes.
originally passed?
Okay.
Well, I don't know when it was originally passed.
Plank, yeah, I remember, and that's why the skate park, and a lot of it was damage to curb and gutter and things that they were
Benches,
jumping
railings.
off of, like what we saw
You
here
name
in the
it.
meetings.
And
Yeah.
people coming and going to the parking lot. I mean, there are people,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
people are having fun skateboarding, and I'm sure that it's not always the top concern if someone's walking out to their car. There's could be a collision,
Yeah.
run into people's parked cars, all those kind of things. And I think it just is something I was asked to look into and include. And so we added public parking area and the enforcement and penalties to try to improve what I think the prior council intended to do. And we just made sure that it was more clear in this, with this ordinance.
So this is skateboard specific.
Skateboard's design, what it means, any board, surface, or similar device that propels by human power, usually has 4 wheels, is used to carry or propel an opponent. So I don't think that excludes a 3-wheeled skateboard, but it was just the definition of it usually has 4 wheels.
Okay.
So that would exclude bicycles and the new little gizmo that you can get down at the Chamber of Commerce. I saw them advertising for the little scooter that you hop on in Segway. Is that what they're called? Those are allowed to be driven in the
Yeah,
business
that's
district.
a separate issue, which we're certainly taking a look at because it opens up there are many, many, many different types of vehicles from, you've seen the one-wheeled skateboards that are motorized, you see the motorized hoverboards, you see e-bikes, you see wheelchairs that are electric, obviously golf carts. There's a broad range of vehicles, and this is specifically for skateboards, specifically to try and prevent the damage that we've incurred by basically out here. And we're not the only ones. I saw those same appliances when we were in Cincinnati as well, and they interrupt so somebody can't get on can't slide on the board because there's a big ball right there and they'll go flying.
Yeah.
And you hate to have to resort to that. But I'm fully supportive of giving something, a greater means of enforcement when it's continued to be a problem.
I asked the same question today in an email, and I think the answer I've received is that we'll be working on a policy for all those other motorized things.
We haven't decided yet
Coming up,
the direction we're heading on
yeah.
those. That's all being, this changes. It seems like every 6 months there's a new vehicle, and before you know it, they're going to be flying around on who knows
The
what.
one thing I want to be clear about this isn't a new direction that the city's going. The skateboards have been, there's been an ordinance against skateboards in these areas in the downtown business district. I would have assumed before I looked more closely at this ordinance that you could not skateboard in our parking lot of the city hall there, but upon a more careful reading of it, it wasn't abundantly clear that public parking areas were excluded, and so we included those words, public parking area, just to make sure that that everybody was on notice for that. And we included the enforcement penalties. That's the change in this ordinance, but it's been an ordinance for quite some time. This issue's been nothing new for this city, and I think it's been mostly effective. And I think adding the ability for enforcement and penalties will make it even more effective. But this isn't a change of direction. It's just making sure we specifically include public parking areas.
And also to be clear, obviously this is an ordinance, and unless you desire to pass it tonight on both readings, you certainly can consider this at a later meeting, the second reading. So I know these questions are fair game, and it's important to answer these questions. But as normal with the ordinances, it does require 2 votes, and again, at your discretion.
I had a question about the definition of sidewalk. We're at the because it excludes any public paths or trails now. When we go to put in the public path down at Center Lake, then we'll need to make a decision at that time whether bicycles are allowed or not allowed on there. And then at that point, because of the way this is written, if we allow bicycles, we would then have to specifically amend this to not allow something like skateboards on that pathway down there.
Yeah, we designed the definition, when you have ordinances, it's good to have definitions for stuff so people are
Correct.
clearly aware of what they can and can't do. And there was an intent to exclude paths, trails, or walkways that were designated by appropriate signs for bicycle travel. And I think the idea is if you can ride your bicycle down a designated path, trail, or way, you can push a skateboard under your feet down the same trail, that's designed for people to ride on it, and appropriate caution around pedestrians. There's not people pulling in and out of the bicycle trails and those kind of things. So yes, that if you wanted to then not allow skateboards on a bicycle path, you would have to make some other amendment to this.
And this only covers the downtown area, so it doesn't cover like over at Pike Lake where I've almost been knocked down by a skateboard several times going down that boardwalk.
This ordinance defines the downtown business district as bounded by Detroit Street, Lake Street, Fort Wayne Street, and Winona Avenue. So it's
So it's just right down
the
here.
downtown. And
Yeah.
obviously, as a councilwoman, if you see a need or a desire for a larger ordinance for a larger part of the city, I'll be happy to help you work on that. But for tonight's purposes, what is being presented is just the downtown business.
Well, and that's what caught my eye about this, because we don't have any public paths or trails downtown yet, but we are going to in the new park development down at Center Lake. So I just wanted to know that definition. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Good discussion.
Yeah, Scott, we've been looking at some other things as well, under enforcement and penalties. And I guess the question is, who would be charged, or what department would be charged with enforcing this ordinance? And should that be put in this ordinance as well, providing clarity?
So currently, we have ordinance provisions that allow Warsaw Police Department to enforce all of our ordinances. We have ordinance provisions that allow our code enforcement officer to enforce building codes. We have, I believe, some ordinances that allow our parking attendant to enforce parking codes. And we're considering some other ordinances that might allow people from the fire department to enforce some codes, or maybe even other people tasked with that. So I would say currently, the person who could enforce this penalty would be a Warsaw Police Department
Through the
officer.
PD. Should that be put in just to provide some clarity? Or is it necessary?
It's already part of the enforcement.
Okay.
Essentially, that's our only means of enforcement.
Right.
Separate
Okay.
from code enforcement, which has its own hearing officer in our
So unless
plan
we-
department. can
Unless
go.
we added them, it would just fall back to the PD.
Probably.
Yeah.
He'd have to
Okay.
Yes.
clarify
Yeah.
that, but it's police department that's
Okay.
responsible for enforcing code violation.
Good question. Others?
I really like the fact that we're updating our ordinances. We were finding that some of these are really outdated, and that I think is a smart thing to do. I hope we continue to do that. And with that, I would make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-07-02.
All right, thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Jerry?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion, comments, questions before we vote?
I'm just glad we're doing it, because I've been afraid with all the cars that park out there in the evening to go to the restaurants and everything, that one of those skateboards is gonna go flying and damage somebody's vehicle out there.
Or somebody.
I'll also admit, about 2 years ago, I parked my car on the west side of the lot, and I walked out of a meeting, and 2 young men were on the skateboards up on the flower pots, and they were having fun. But the skateboard slid underneath my car. Now, the skateboard was worth more than my car, as you guys know, but I was concerned. I didn't really say anything. Now maybe I'm getting my chance to say something, but not only safety in a public parking lot, but also that skateboard could have been damaged if it hit my car. So it's what I'm saying is, I think this is a very good thing. So, yeah.
Or somebody could have been under your car retrieving their
But
skateboard, and you wouldn't have known it.
I just sort of looked at him and I thought, well, there are other cars that park here too, but I got in my car and I went home, and they continued to have fun, and nobody got hurt. But I do believe this is a step in the right direction, so good. Thank
All
you.
right. There's a motion on the floor. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, it's certainly your prerogative to approve this on second reading tonight with a unanimous vote as we just had. But certainly I can leave it up to you, and if we do nothing tonight, it'll be on next meeting's agenda. All right, I think you're silence says it all. Appreciate it. All right. Finally, we have a walk-in. This is a CF1 tax abatement from Texmo. Lynn, I think you talked to Jeremy about this one. Any comments?
Yeah, he was sorry he couldn't be here tonight. They had another obligation, and so during the May 17th meeting, you guys had approved a large amount of tax abatements, and Texmo was one of them. The memo stated that the Texmo tax abatements were for real and personal property, but in your package, only the personal property abatement was, the CF1 form was included. So just to clarify things, and the minutes from the May 17th meeting reflect that it was just for the personal property, but just so we can get it moving, so we can get it to the county, so they can do their thing they have to do for their budget cycle. I just thought it would be better, so you saw the paperwork and you're aware that there was real property that you basically sort of approved but didn't see the paperwork. That was it mentioned in the minutes.
So this was a 2016 start. I assume this might be the 5th year. If it occurred then, they had originally proposed a $2 million investment in real estate improvements, and they put 2.8 in. So they've certainly met their obligation and have estimated hiring 28 employees or up to 56. So it's certainly apparent. And I assume these were the same figures that Jeremy used last month. So I don't know that there's any more information you might need to make a decision on this. But Lynn, thank you for carrying that message from Jeremy.
Just a note too, this is one, because this is in my district, that we inherited from the county when we annexed it. And there was a little bit of a mix-up the first year because they didn't know who to file with. And then they filed everything on time, but we didn't have both sets of paperwork at the time that we passed it. So they have definitely tried to be compliant after that first mix-up, that very first year when the transition took place. So I just wanted to add that note that they've been doing their part this time. It wasn't like it was last time that they're walking it in late, but it was that we just didn't have everything together when we did it.
All right. So any further questions? Or I'll entertain a motion to take action on this CF1.
I'll make a motion that we accept this abatement.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion, questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Excuse me, thank you. I don't see anything else on the agenda. Lynn, do you have anything? Are there any other matters to come before the council?
It looks like the city attorney might have something.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention, last week, the AIM put on a seminar regarding electronic meetings, and we got some more information about that. You all approved the ordinance that allowed for continued electronic meetings after the governor's emergency expires. One of the things that was clear from our seminar was there's still a lot of questions that about the state statute, but one thing that they did say was clear, and we've had this question when we were dealing with the issue, is if one of those 7 items that you must be present for is contained within that meeting, then you may not participate at all in that meeting electronically if one of those 7 items is on the agenda for that evening.
Wow.
So I just wanted to point that out if you're arranging your vacation schedules or whatnot, that I think there's a lot of positives about being able to appear electronically, but they were clear that you may not participate at all electronically at a meeting that contains one of those 7 issues. So I wanted to make sure you all were aware of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Jack and Diane and I sat here and watched that, and I know there were some questions that came up. I think a lot of it is with the new statute. It's got to shake down. There's always things they don't think of when they're passing, and I know a lot of that hopefully will become clear, but we were also received clarity on the fact that redevelopment commission has to pass their own ordinance or rules, if you will. Basically, it's setting the rules. So we'll work on that as well. I've already talked to Jeremy about that.
Do you want me to remind everybody what the 7 things are, or do you guys have this memorized?
No, remind us.
Adopt a budget, which we talked about earlier, make a reduction in personnel, initiate a referendum, impose or increase a fee, impose or increase a penalty, exercise the council's power of eminent domain, or establish, impose, raise, or renew a tax.
Which I thought about that for tonight after having attended that. So if anybody was on electronically tonight, they should not have been on and could not have voted on what we could vote on the initial reading, but on the final one, when we actually established the fines, that would fall under those 7.
This is the final action.
Yeah,
So
for
they
a
could have been
final
on
action.
tonight.
So, yeah, so that would be another thing that we just need to keep in mind if we ever think about suspending rules and passing something on a second reading. We just need to keep in mind that if we do have anybody on electronically that time, we cannot do that because they've already participated in the meeting up to that point. And, then we couldn't do it unless we make it very clear that we were going to do that ahead of time or something, which we really can't do because we need to have discussion and debate publicly. So in other words, we just need to really be careful about suspending rules and passing things on second reading if they would touch on any one of those 7 issues.
And so, clarification helping me out, if there's one item on the entire agenda, you cannot participate in the entire meeting? Or-
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, wow,
Entire
then
meeting.
that'll eliminate the electronic, yeah. Wow,
To a
not
degree,
sure.
it cuts quite a few of them out.
Oh, yeah, it does a lot.
So one of the things we're going to work on, Josh and Mike and myself, are kind of helping define that because we need to be careful then if you want to watch a meeting that you're not logged in through the board pack as participating in the meeting, that you're not, that Lynn doesn't count you present for the meeting. You may need to watch the public feed
No,
on
it
live
would be-
stream.
It would be on, the live
You can
stream and
watch
not
it.
the
Yeah,
go-
so you
the
could
live
watch
stream.
it, but
Not
you
the
wouldn't
go-to
want to
meeting.
appear as a
You can't get on the
participant in
go-to
any
meeting.
way.
Right.
You could
So
watch
that-
on the board on the live stream, but
Yeah.
not the go-to meeting.
Because we wouldn't want your picture displayed up on the thing, even if you were not voting, even if you abstained from all votes, that it still would be
You participate
a
in the meeting.
participate if you logged in through the board pack,
Yeah, my knee
the
jerk
go-to
is,
meeting, yeah.
my knee jerk is I don't like that. I mean, I don't like that at all. I like the idea that if Diane's in Florida, or, I was earlier in the spring, I can participate in 4 items, but if there's one that's on there, okay, I cannot participate.
Yeah,
I
and we
cannot
asked
vote.
that, I think I was the one that asked it, actually.
Well, the legislature made
specifically.
that, they
Yeah, I
made that
know.
very clear, so
And they
there's
may
really no
change it.
option.
Yeah, there's no option, but that.
So that's just what we have, we got what we
Right.
got.
Yeah,
But we've proven we can do it.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
kicker. I mean, we've all proven.
Well, no, that's a little different during emergencies. Those rules don't apply.
okay, there's a good point.
It's just for
Yeah, good point.
the everyday use
Right.
of electronic meetings. There's
Another thing that was clarified was the fact that all of the meetings that took place electronically up to this point were under emergency orders, so they would not count towards 50% of the meetings that you could miss in a year. Now, I'm not advocating that anybody start as soon as the emergency order expires and start missing all the meetings from now until December, but they did make that clear, and some of you had that question. The other question that I raised was whether, like I'm on Plan Commission, so if I miss City Council and I miss Plan Commission, is that 2 consecutive meetings? And they said, no, it's 2 consecutive meetings of the governing body that's meeting. So if I happen to be gone over a 2-week period and missed a council meeting and a Plan Commission, and then another something that I'm appointed on that I vote on, then that would.
Each of the boards has its own rules.
Yeah.
And those rules apply to that board. So you couldn't miss 2 meetings. Well, and that's not true because redevelopment commission, you can, it's the different,
It's very
different
defined.
rules. totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could also just say, like when I was down in Florida, I'm not going to leave dinner early with my family because I wanted to be a part of this meeting. I'll just not attend at all. I'll skip it, and there's no consequence for me either. Yeah, that's too
Back to
bad.
the way it was
man.
before.
That's too bad. Yeah, I think it really limits. My knee jerk here, but
So-
that limits what this could have provided in very unique situations. So
I think it will improve as time goes
Okay.
by. I think this was a post-pandemic knee jerk. I mean,
Okay.
not a knee jerk, but an attempt, especially by the Public Access Counselor's office, knowing that everybody did prove it would work, but they wanted to have restraint outside of a pandemic. And then the legislature, I think, probably took issue with that, and there was my understanding was they threw those conditions in at the last minute. Doesn't mean they'll stay like that,
Yeah.
but for right now, that's what's in there.
okay.
One other thing that was pointed out, and I see this all the time with state statutes, they have to tweak them sometimes. Like, they will hear what you had to say, Jeff,
Okay.
and you're probably not the only person in Indiana that has those feelings. And so they will listen and see if they can just change some words in a statute possibly. But right now, the words that they have say that.
Yeah.
Additionally, one thing that kind of became clear with that meeting and some other stuff was this community is really fortunate that we were ahead of the curve of most by having the ability to broadcast our meetings. And we did a really good job of allowing people making an effort when they could call in and participate or be able to participate. So many communities are far behind what the city of Warsaw was able to do as far as making this meeting public, and certainly this meeting public in any kind of real time. And the city of Warsaw is really fortunate that it's able to do that. And so some of these rules, as more cities get up to speed on being able to have a more interactive public meeting by electronic means, some of those rules may change, I think, in the future, but a lot of places didn't keep up. But there was certainly a concern that many of the legislators have, that the best governance is to have people in their community, and there was a concern that people would be trying to legislate from afar, and they didn't really want that to be an ongoing thing either.
Well, the other part of this is, it seemed to me that the way the legislation was written is that if you allow one of us to virtually participate, you have to also make available to the public the ability to virtually participate. And for most meetings,
Okay.
you know, what we've got with our live stream allows access to our meetings. So the only time it becomes an issue is is with the public hearing. And when the public hearing that requires that you take public comment, you know, we've utilized the phone call-in, we've utilized the texting. Some try and have a go-to meeting with unlimited number of people on it, and you know what a difficulty that is from a sound perspective. I think the way we've done it is again, we're ahead. We've already made that access available, so it's there. And there was also some suggestion that these meetings should have to be recorded. Ours are recorded for a year and archived, and they're available the next day. So, you know, as far as the transparency, the recordings, I mean, we've done well with that, and I give kudos to you all for allowing us to move ahead with that and improve our sound, because there are some specific discussions about, you got to be able to see and hear these people on this thing. It can't be some tin can that you're trying to talk through, or it really doesn't count. So kudos to the city and to you all, and I know Stacy was a big part of that,
She was.
getting us up and running with our streaming service. And again, we reacted to the need to make these available to the public, and at the end of the day, it paid off well. So
Another neat thing to the point that Joe was just talking about that I'd not really thought about, because I was thinking about it from the perspective of being a council person, but allowing access to the meeting allows someone who's homebound, who may not be able to come down here to City Hall, but has a valid point that they want to make about something that we're discussing, would allow them to be able to do that in the future. And that's kind of an interesting thing. And, I think a good thing to think about is that not only, are we like, a lot of this was meant to police us, but inadvertently, or maybe advertently, but it allows more public access than was previously available. Someone doesn't have to be available, or sitting right here. So even someone that lives in a neighborhood and has a concern and wants to speak up about it, but they're somewhere else like Florida, Jeff, they could weigh in at a meeting also and speak. And I think another thing that we just discussed when we were talking about here was the importance of reminding people to come up to the microphone to speak so that that is picked up on the video and on the audio so that anybody that is watching can hear all of the comments and be able to respond if they want to respond to something. So that was another thing that just I thought about as we were watching.
So I think the important thing, I appreciate Scott bringing it up. We've got time. I mean, we've got our ordinance in place now. If there's changes you want to consider to that, they can't be less restrictive, as you know, but they could potentially be more restrictive. I know there was some discussion about allowing 50% of the meetings to be attended. So with some of this clarification that's occurred, if there's things you want to consider to amend that ordinance, I mean, certainly it will certainly be a work in progress, and I imagine at some point we'll have to revisit it. But for now, I'm thankful to you all for putting this in place. And as we all found out, it's early in the game.
One other just quick thing that we didn't, that we'll look at in our committee, but just to remind everybody that it would be nice if you let somebody know if you're not going to be here. And we may work on some specific timelines to do that, but because they need to know in order to make sure that access is set up and that we're making sure that you're connecting. So, at least Jack and Joe, and we talked about possibly Lynn, because Lynn has to keep 2 separate attendance logs now. She has to both show who's here present in person and who's present electronically. And so just be important that people know that if you do know ahead of time and it's not one of those emergency situations that you're allowed to attend electronically, if you could let somebody know, that would be really helpful.
Jack, any comments? I know you were watching that same meeting.
Yeah, no, the only thing that has not been covered yet is, I know that there's a few that are sitting up here tonight who this really, from what I can understand, doesn't really cover, and that would be the city attorney, of him having to be here. And it seems to me that that was done for a reason. I mean, it was basically, I think, to govern us, the council members here who have to make the decisions. And so there would still be some of that freedom for the mayor to allow the city attorney to zoom in or whatever when ever need be.
Well, obviously, prior to the pandemic, there was no provisions for e-voting
Right.
and electronic voting, or they used to call it call-in voting. And that's, I think we've taken a step in the right direction,
Yes.
but there's still work to be done.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, anybody else?
I have one other item that I'd like to bring up. At our last meeting, we had a citizen show up and ask the council to consider limiting the use of fireworks. And the mayor placed that with me to look into it. We do have a few people. We've talked to the city attorney. We're kind of hashing some things out and beating some things around. Just so that you know that we are looking at it. There has been quite a few people, quite a few citizens, I should say, contact some of our council people. So we're listening to you, and we're going to try to take appropriate action.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate that. All right. Well, remember, those 2 meetings in August, mark your phones for 6 p.m. instead of 7. We don't want to embarrass anybody. So we'll make sure that,
Won't be the one late.
I'll be texting you.
Thank you.
all right. Lynn, anything else you want to add? Are we all set?
I'm set.
All right. Well, then let's ask for a motion to adjourn. How's that?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you all.
Can only bore you, remember?
Yeah, I couldn't get it.
Wonderful, we don't